This is a nested for loop in JavaScript. Here I have a for loop that counts from 1 to 4, and it's inside of another for loop that counts from 1 to 3. And if you give it some thought, you could probably figure out what the output of this nested for loop will be. Again, the outer for loop is going from 1 to 3, so x is going to start at 1. Then I'm entering this inner for loop, y equals 1, and it's going to write out the value x equals whatever the x value is, y equals whatever the y value is. So the first thing you would expect to see is 1, 1. Then remember, it stays inside of this inner for loop until the inner for loop is completed. So x does not change in value until it finishes the inner for loop. So x equals 1, y is going to equal 1, then y will equal 2, then y will equal 3, then y will equal 4. Then it exits the inner for loop, goes back and gets the next value of x, so x is now going to equal 2, and then it re-enters the inner for loop and starts it from the very, very beginning. So x equals 2, then it goes y equals 1, y equals 2, y equals 3, y equals 4, exits this guy, gets the next value of x, x equals 3, then it re-enters the inner for loop, y equals 1, y equals 2, y equals 3, y equals 4, then exits that, and if x is, am I up to 3? I think I am. So if y is up to 3, it is now done with the outer for loop and it exits the entire loop structure. So I'm going to give it a run and let's see if we're right. So I'll launch it in Chrome and you can see that again, yes, x is 1 and then y starts 1, 2, 3, 4. X is 2, and then again y repeats 1, 2, 3, 4. X is 3, y repeats 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's printing out the value of x and y in the inside of this loop here. X equals 1, or x equals whatever, y equals whatever. And notice everything is being aligned in the center because I have this CSS script right here. Everything aligns in the center. So hopefully this makes sense. We've done things like this in BYOB, Snap, but here it is in JavaScript. And I could play around with this a little bit, and I suggest you play around with this a little bit as well. I'm going to, instead of having everything print out in the center like this, I could certainly have a document.write here, and I'll just play around with a couple of things. Here I'm going to print out just the x value, and then in the inner loop, I'm going to print out just the y value. And we could see what happens. So I have a new paragraph. I'm going to print out the x value, and then I'm going to print out the y value. No new paragraph. So I'm only starting a new paragraph every time I get a new value of x. And we could see what happens. And again, you probably would have guessed this might happen. So I'm creating a new paragraph. I'm printing out the value of x. And then I'm repeating this inner for loop until it's done. Y equals 1, y equals 2, y equals 3, y equals 4. Get the next value of x and so forth. So notice it's all printed out on one line now. X equals 1, y goes 1, 2, 3, 4. X equals 2, y goes 1, 2, 3, 4. X equals 3, y goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I suggest you play around with this a little bit and hopefully you'll get what's going on too. Now I could make some trickier nested for loops, which I will do. Maybe I'll go y equals 1, y less than or equal to x. We could see what happens. You should actually try to think about what might happen here. Maybe pause the video, see if you can figure out what the output will be, and then I'll run it. So pause the video. All right, are you back again? Here is the output. Well, I think I did save it already. I don't know, was that what you expected? So x, I didn't change the outer for loop at all. X is still going to count 1, 2, 3, but this time the inner for loop is counting from 1 up to whatever x is. So it's only going to go up to the value x. So x is 1, and then y is just going to count up to 1. X is 2, y is now going to count 1, 2, x is 3, y now counts 1, 2, 3. So there are various ways you can play around with nested for loops, but the big idea here is that the outer loop increments to the next value, and then the inner loop starts from scratch and completely reruns itself, and then goes and gets the next value of the outer loop, and then the inner loop runs from scratch again from the very beginning all the way through to the end, and so forth. So I hope you play around with nested for loops, and I hope they do make some sense to you. All right, get to work.